Mahomes completes it. McKinnon for the touchdown.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? This is KCSN Update, our daily Chiefs show and podcast presented by our friends at DraftKings. Thanks for hanging out today. I'm BJ Kissel, former Chiefs reporter. Now I'm working with more than 25 others trying to build a new outlet for Kansas City sports fans here at KC Sports Network. We appreciate you for hanging out. Please hit that like and subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Now it's Tuesday, and you know that means we'll be joined by The Athletic's Nate Taylor. So let's not waste any time and let's just bring Nate on right now. Nate, you're back from Cincinnati. Before we get into our 5 burning questions for you, and a couple of these are going to be pretty burning, I'm not going to lie on this one. How was the trip? Give us a story for those who only watched it on TV and weren't there in person.
Yeah. So Cincinnati Stadium, a Paycor Stadium, I guess is what they call it now, based on the corporate sponsor.
Paul Brown.
Sure. It's a unusual place. Obviously, it's right off the river, but it doesn't have like the appeal of like Pittsburgh. It's sort of old school. You feel cramped in there, kind of. I get the sense that it's becoming a hostile environment. I think Bengals fans are obviously like juiced up by what they're seeing Joe Burrow and the rest of the team do. I think Zach Taylor is a very good coach as the season sort of wears on here. But I will always remember Cincinnati for this, BJ. I got on the Uno direct flight from Kansas City to Cincinnati on Saturday. The plane left at 7 a.m., so I was bright and early. We land. You can't get to your hotel usually that early in the morning, obviously, because there are obviously guests. But it's like, well, I guess I'm going to watch the World Cup match between USA and Netherlands in Cincinnati's airport. And there's like joy and optimism amongst all these people just, there. Either obviously they're leaving Cincinnati or they're coming to Cincinnati early. Obviously, there was a lot of Chiefs fans on my flight. And so it was cool to see like Fox, show P&L, show the city, the amount of, joy and enthusiasm and belief. And knowing that like, wow, I'm not even in my city. And like, I feel like very prideful and joy. And then, yeah, man, when they go on those counterattacks, it's nightmarish. So I always remember where I was when the USA beat Angola in 2010, because I was an intern at the Boston Globe at the time, and the amount of euphoria that sort of swept everybody that summer. Oh my God, we're gonna make the knockout route to this very young, exciting US team. Just getting outclassed by the Netherlands, a very good opponent. So those are my 2 trips. I know we're going to talk a little bit about what the locker room's like. I don't want to necessarily give that away this early, but yeah, I watched USA Netherlands in Cincinnati's airport at 10 a.m. What am I doing?
Yeah. I caught a very small piece of it. We were tailgating before the Big 12 championship game.
Of course.
And
yes, what you told me about. Yeah.
Yes. And we were with a bunch of friends of ours that live down there. And there was one van that had like TVs hooked up in it. And all the kids were in there watching the soccer game. We said, give us updates. Like, just tell us if something happens and we'll come in and watch the replay. And we were all out talking, catching up with a lot of friends and former teammates that I played baseball with in college. So it was pretty cool to see a bunch of people down there. But one thing I love about that scenario that you just said of like a bunch of I call them frienders. I made up that word a long time ago. They're like friends, but they're strangers, but you're collectively rooting for the same things. You're high-fiving and talking to them like they're long lost pals.
We're like, shoot. We can attack. We cannot score. Yes.
I know that I've got a brand, and I'm enjoying learning more about soccer. It's
Mhm.
not been a sport that I spend a ton of time watching, but obviously I'm going to root for anything that's Kansas City. We've got the network now,
Yeah.
the channel now that we've got our soccer shows with No Other Pod with those guys. And then Allie Trost has got her show.
Yes. Shout out to Allie.
Yes, they do. They're already doing a phenomenal job. And it's another nice thing just to not have to worry about, like, they've got soccer covered and we're going to be in a good spot there. But Matt Lane and I have always joked that we were going to start a soccer show called Just Fucking Kick It, because when I watch soccer, that's pretty much all I end up yelling when they dribble around the goal, and it's like, just fucking kick it. And on social media during the game, I had people because we talked about that on 21 Questions and a few other shows that were like tagging us, and then the Discord was tagging us saying, like, this is literally playing out to be perfect for that show if it ever happens. Maybe start off as a segment sometime, because neither one of us know anything about soccer really. But that doesn't stop most of America from becoming soccer analysts, every 4 years when this stuff goes down. Anyway,
I actually enjoy that part. I'm like, look, people have their things about, like, the NBA. People have their things about postseason baseball. Like, you haven't watched all 162, but as soon as, like, it gets to October, you're just like, how can he pitch? How can he pitch hit that guy? How? And all of a sudden, like the 6th and the 7th guy in the bullpen, and you're like, oh, he's been terrible all year. And it's like, you haven't watched, like, you don't know the matchups, but that is kind of the beauty of sports, is like, you get really invested, it matters. And then you're like, just, this is outside of Christian Pulisic, who is wonderful. Yeah. He is awesome. But anybody else who got anywhere near the box, just shoot, man. Just shoot it.
Yeah, it is to bring it back to football here, but because you said that, I used to, not on camera, off to the side, when I was at the Chiefs, there would be like these prevailing narratives on social media. So they'd step off to the side, and some of them I wouldn't necessarily agree with, but I'd be like, I see that. Like, let me ask that question, but I don't want to necessarily put the coach on blast or ask it in a way that seems disrespectful or whatever it is. And if my job is to ask the question, get the right answer, and then put that information out, I can do that in a lot of different ways. And so the coaches would come off to the side. It was always coordinator. It wasn't Coach Reed. That, but people listening might not. So the coordinators would step off to the side and I'd ask them. And this is why, like, when you say that, saying, why don't they just do this? Why don't they do that? If you ask somebody who plays or like knows, and they give you like the actual reasoning, it will be so far above. And this isn't like demeaning when I say this, but their knowledge of the game is so much higher that it's like, why don't they just run the football? Like, if I ask like one of the coordinators, like, why wouldn't you just run the football? The reasoning that they would explain to me is something that you would not be able to respond with, because you'll realize how much more they know about what's happening on the field and why they're doing certain things.
Yeah.
These people are very, very good at what they do. It doesn't stop. I mean, we're creating an entire network where we talk about things. We facilitate intelligent discussion as best we can. But I always remember taking a few of the coordinators. Doug Peterson was one of the guys that was always really good. He'd be like, Doug, like, this is what people are like, why don't you just do this? And then he'd go on for like 2 minutes and like, all right. All right, I get it.
Yep. Coaching's hard. Like, coaching's really difficult based on what you
guys have you have a lot of information, and if you do this, then they do that, and it puts you in a situation that's less favorable based on the matchups and based on your scouting of what's going to happen. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about this game between the Chiefs and the Bengals. And my first burning question for you, Nate: 3 losses to the Bengals by a total of 9 points. Whew. So these games have been close.
Yes,
but I've got to ask, are the Chiefs capable of beating the Bengals?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're capable.
Okay.
Are they the better team? Not yet. Not right now. We found them, guys. We found them. We found a team in the AFC that is clearly better than the Bengals. And, the first game, it was like, hey, that was cool. By the way, the Bengals needed that game more than the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs were trying to win the 1 seed last year. Okay, fine. That team needed the game more. Some weird things happened. The Chiefs never got the ball back. Okay, fine. Like, weird game. They needed the game more. They're trying to make the playoffs. Makes sense.
You could almost say the same thing about this game on Sunday.
True.
I'll make that case when you're done. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The AFC Championship game. Yeah, they're gonna be talking about that for decades, kids. Now the point I made, last week when I was talking to Jay Morrison and Paul Diener, our guys at The Athletic who cover the Bengals, was, did the Bengals sort of sneak up on the Chiefs? Because, the Chiefs were up 21-3, and unfortunately they relaxed because they're like, we've been to back-to-back Super Bowls, so we'll just go to a third. And the Bengals sort of snuck up on them in the second half and obviously won the game. Well, I was saying, like, they can't sneak up on them a third time. The circumstances are different. It's slightly different teams, but obviously they have much of the core guys are back. They're just better. Like, they just played better in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs had a chance to extend their lead, and Travis Kelce fumbled. Nobody else on the Bengals made a mistake similar that gave the ball to the Chiefs. Tyler Boyd drops a easy touchdown pass, but they still scored points on that drive. The Chiefs didn't score points in the fourth quarter. So when I look at it from a big picture standpoint, it's like, well, maybe the Bills are better, but there's always that maybe. For 3 games now, it's pretty much unrefutable that the Bengals are the better team, even if it is by a close margin that you just mentioned, 9 total points. So, of course, the Chiefs are capable of beating the Bengals in a rematch in January if that is to happen. But right now, the Bengals have probably a matchup edge, and they're starting to get a psychological edge just because they've done something that no other AFC team has done in the Mahomes era.
Yeah. At some point, now I'll make the case that I believe at some point, and I think we're at it now, if these two teams meet again, all of the momentum, all of the confidence is going to be on the Bengals side, and everyone's going to be doubting the Chiefs and the amount of shit that's going to be talked by everybody leading into that game. And you know how these guys are wired, at least to focus on all those kind of doubting them going into a playoff game. I feel like that could, I'm not saying it's going to be good for the Chiefs, but based on the way in which, and this goes into my second question, I don't want to get quite there, but the way they talked throughout the week, they weren't feeling like an underdog. They were feeling like the bully who was like, we're going to go take care of business. We're the Chiefs. We're going to go do this. And they got punched in the mouth and didn't have a response in that kind of way. And that's what frustrated me most in watching the game is you talked all of this and then you're missing tackles. You're doing things defensively, not coming out. You went out and blitzed and you couldn't get home and you got torched. You sat back and you couldn't rally to tackle. Like, it's a horrible combination. It was just a bad game. And this happens. Doesn't mean that it's going to continue on. I think that kind of happens for about 36 hours. Everybody makes big proclamations on, well, now they suck. Like, no, they don't suck. They lost by 3 points on the road to a really good football team.
Right.
And we saw the margin of error, and they're not so good that they can play as poorly as they did and not play better. I'd say offensively, compared to what we saw in the second half of the playoff game, that was significantly better for the Chiefs offense in that game. But, we'll move into the second question. All this stuff's going to come up at some point. And you're there every day, obviously, with the team. The fabric of this Chiefs team better than anyone else who covers this team. How bad of a look to you was it? Because you were there when they said these things. You talked to the guys about it. How bad of a look is it to talk, tweet, do the things that they did? And Justin Reed's kind of talking about it more now on social media. We'll get to that. But for the things that were said and tweeted out, how bad a look is it to come out and then play the way, not that they lost, but to play the way that they did on that side of the football?
On defense?
Yeah.
So if the Chiefs go into a playoff game against the Bengals in, 6-7 weeks from now, they will be considered the underdog for all the mentions all the reasons you just mentioned, BJ. It will be the first time I think the Chiefs will be doubted since Mahomes' first playoff game against the Indianapolis Colts in 2018. That's the first time I can really think back to like, oh, well, they got Andrew Luck. And like, I don't know, man, like it's going to be a tight game. And we haven't seen Mahomes do it in the postseason. He's obviously going to win the MVP award, but like, hey, playoff football, a little different. That's the last time I can really remember a large majority of analysts, of reporters, of even fans saying, we have doubts and we need to see you prove it. That will be the case, especially on defense for this team, for such a game. What's wild to me, BJ, is Chris Jones says they were the catalyst for my entire offseason. Justin Reed says I'm gonna lock him up. I'm gonna lock him down straight up.
And they were soft.
And he's a finesse guy, being Hayden Hurst, who unfortunately didn't finish the game because of an injury.
Right.
You got Willie Gay sort of bumping the music, getting everybody hyped on Friday after the practice. You know, he's the one that controls the stereo in the locker room. He's playing music to get everybody's, just to let everybody feel like such a confidence on Friday. With Willie Gay playing music to get everybody just energized. Hey, we just finished our last practice. The game plan is in. We are going to handle these gentlemen. Like that was the vibe in the locker room on Friday. As you mentioned, I don't know where Spagnuolo could have went. At times he dropped 8, like the Bengals did. At times he blitzed. They picked it up, as you said. Hey, let's keep everything in front of us and rally to the football. Well, some people didn't tackle to their capabilities. It's wild that the players who talked, I felt the least, because of course they had nothing else to do, were the rookie cornerbacks, and yet they were the ones that you feel probably the most positive about this game, even though you knew based on the matchups, well, yeah, they're gonna have like their lumps along the way, but they didn't get embarrassed. These veterans feel like they got embarrassed on Sunday. So for Justin Reed to come out and apologize after the game, for Frank Clark to basically guarantee that we will not look like that again for the remainder of the season, let alone if it's against the Bengals or not. For Nick Bolton to basically say like they attacked the middle of our defense, and that's like I don't know if people got it after the game, but he's intimating the idea that like they chose us. They really didn't choose the rookies. Like they chose to go right through the middle of our defense. And that's concerning because no team has really done that this season in that particular way. So when you look at it, it's a quiet locker room because they lost, but now you got to go through the idea of like they might be better than you, and you need to like acknowledge that sooner rather than later. And for all that talk, for all that sort of belief that the team had, at the end of the day, you still got to execute, and they had to just realize that like they did not execute as well as they could have, given that I don't think the scheme can change. You know, it's funny, BJ, you mentioned how you talk to like a Doug Peterson or you talk to these coaches. But when you face a team 3 times in the same year and it's much of the same guys, like I don't know what else like change-ups you can get. So now it really comes down to, can you just execute? Because we know the players. We know what they can do. You know, the Bengals tried to test Trent McDuffie. We don't want to do that anymore. Okay. We feel like our matchup is more with Joshua Williams. Okay. Well, Joshua Williams in coverage is pretty good in 2.5 seconds. It's the post 2.5 that lets, Jamar Chase get to his third move, basically.
And no cornerbacks covering Jamar Chase for longer than 2.5 seconds. Let's be honest.
Like
there's 6 guys in the league that you can't do that with, and he's one of those dudes.
Guys, one of Joshua Williams' best reps is on the longest gain of the game for the Bengals. It's a 40-yard catch where Jamar Chase runs a inside move, an outside move, then goes back to the outside again, and Joshua Williams falls down because he's just like, I can't, like, what am I supposed to do? Like he's doing like 3 moves. Why is he catching the ball? And why is he still running? It's because the blitz didn't get home. They put a 5-man pressure. I got 2 safeties behind me. Neither one of them tackles. So it comes down to execution, and they need to realize that they got to execute better. Starting Sunday against the Broncos, and then obviously be ready for a potential rematch.
Yeah, I'm looking through, and I had mentioned a bit ago about social media and what was being said on it right now. This is as of this morning, at the time that we're recording on Tuesday morning, that Justin Reed had tweeted out, unpopular opinion, we lost, but I was still right. Cry about it. And then friend of the program and host of One-on-One, Jeff Allen, former Chief, responded with this PFF grade of, he basically did lock him down. He played very well in coverage.
He did.
Only allowed 1 reception. But most of us remember him getting stiff armed at the line of scrimmage multiple times. And then the camera zooming in on Justin Reed getting talked by Samaje Perine, whoever had the ball at that time, where that's more, you call another player soft. And then this is the tackling side. And this PFF tackling grade is like 32, which isn't the worst of the year, but hasn't been great in tackling this year, but in coverage was absolutely right.
Yeah.
But based on the response on social media right now, it didn't do any good. That tweet did not help anything. Look, people are upset.
Justin Reed's got a lot of pride, and we are seeing his personality as the season moves along. It's an interesting development that I didn't necessarily anticipate. Just given how smart he is when he does talk about the game and the X's and O's and the matchups, which is honestly, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we went to him last Wednesday. Like, hey man, you're real smart. Like you understand football at a level that is obviously supreme, but you can still talk to us in a manner that, like, I'm learning something as I'm talking to Justin Reed, which is what I want all the time. Hey, you weren't a part of this rivalry before, but now you're into it. Just what do you see? What do you think? What do you feel like you could have done, differently? So he gives, honest answers, which is what you always enjoy. And you feel like you came away learning something as to like what he's thinking, what he's seeing in a potential game. But yeah, we're learning more about him, given that he's one of the leaders of the defense. And, BJ, one thing.
So I'm looking through all the comments right now, and it's all over that. Like, Jeff Schwartz is responding. All the former players are responding. Yeah.
I'm wondering what Jeff said.
He just gave the I can't do the face, but it's like the emoji, like the not great, like what are you doing kind of deal, without saying that.
Now, quietly, the Bengals talked to Justin Reed loudly, but quietly in the second half. They wanted the other safety involved all the time in coverage. So, Justin Reed was not the issue on Sunday, by and large, compared to his teammates, compared to his compadre in the deep back end. So, when you watch the Bengals line up, where's the other safety, and how can we use this to our advantage?
That's disappointing. It was a huge year for him, and hopefully he can step up and make some plays, but it hasn't been as great as many of us had hoped for 22 this season. But when you play a game, and this is what I was trying to convey on the post-game show, because a lot of times for like Chiefs fans, like I'm probably, for a lot of people, like the worst person to listen to in those moments, because it's like, it's just one game. It's not a big thing. It's consistent now that it's the Bengals. So yes, it's a little bit more like they definitely have our number. This is definitely a thing. But if Travis Kelce doesn't get the ball pulled out of him by like 7 dudes pulling at him, those are the ones you just kind of live with. Like, it wasn't like he was being like dumb with the ball or did some stupid, like those guys made a play on it. If the 3rd and 11, like Josh Williams' hand moves like 2 inches the other way and deflects that pass, who knows what happens in that game? And all of a sudden the narrative completely shifts if the Chiefs make 2 more plays in that game, that all of a sudden we're talking about the MVS back-to-back, like his big deep ball catches down the middle. We're talking about Carlos Dunlap's play on the goal line at the end of the first half. We're talking about Juju Smith-Schuster stiff arming a DB on 4th down to extend that drive. Like all these little plays that all of a sudden get complete forgot about because we're so frustrated about what Justin Reed said and now what Justin Reed's saying again and all these other things, that you forget all these plays that put him in a position to be ready and have a chance to win a football game. And I do think there is something to be said for, as you give the other guys credit, but defensively, Chiefs played very poorly in so many ways, and some of it's credit to them, but you're a good football team. You should play significantly better than that. Frank Clark talked about that after the game. That you only lost by 3 on the road to a team that is your like block between that and the Bills. Those are the 2 teams you're going to have to beat to get to the AFC, or to get to the Super Bowl. And you have to, like, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you got to earn it. And those are the 2 teams didn't play very well in that game and only lost by 3. So it's not, everything's okay, but it's not everything is as bad as everybody wants to make it seem, because we're not blowing everybody out by 21 points every week. Let's move on to, unless you got another thought on this.
No. It's so true. Like, I'm happy you say it, because you're the voice of reason. and people should realize.
Maybe on Tuesdays, people are okay with it. On Mondays, people don't want to hear
it. Hey, but that's everything you said is true. And people should keep that in mind as the season moves along.
Chiefs are 9-3. They're still atop. I still think. Actually, I don't want to take away question number 4. So we'll wait for that burning question. Let's move on to number 3. This is less heavy compared to the last one's, Nate. This is more newsy. Update us. Okay. Chiefs are without Joe Toney and Kadarius Toney in this game. How close do you think we are to seeing those guys back?
So here's where it gets tricky for me, because Joe Toney was a full participant in practice all of last week. So the expectation was that he was going to play on Sunday. I think the Chiefs were somewhat surprised that he couldn't go, given just Joe Toney's reputation, which I used to call him. I mean, I still do. I mean, I used to just call him a robot. Like, he's so systematically good. He's so systematically reliable. His technique is flawless at times when he's healthy. So you never really hear about Joe Toney because he's just a robot and he's really good. He's at the time when the Chiefs signed him, he was the highest paid left guard. And then, I think a lot of people praised Joe Toney when he had to move to left tackle because of Orlando Brown's calf injury in the first game against the Bengals, that it was like, oh, this Joe Toney guy's pretty good. It's like, yeah, you guys don't recognize him just because he's out of his normal robot-like position because he's so good and technically sound. So we'll see how it goes with him. This ankle injury is the first, I guess, legitimate injury that has forced him to miss the field. When he didn't play against the Rams, that was his first career missed game. Even though he's into year 7 now, I believe, in his career. I think he had 5 years with the New England Patriots, Super Bowl champion with them, 2 years now with the Chiefs. So even if he's a full participant, I guess you got to walk that line all the way up to kickoff, because Nick Allegretti told me after the Rams game that he didn't know he was going to play until 2 hours before kickoff. So even Joe Toney thought he was going to play against the Rams, and they were pretty sure that he was going to go against the Bengals. So it's not significant enough that he's going to go on IR unless he had a real setback, which I have not been told that. And of course, you have to think, and this is where when you get to early December, it gets difficult. Do we think about the game that's in place in front of us, or do we think about long term, because we are going to be in the playoffs? All of a sudden, we might go from 2 playoff games to having to play 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. If we just sit you down one more week, how does that affect, how quickly you can come back and just, make sure that doesn't re-aggravate your ankle injury. But yeah, it's going to be something to watch. From a professional standpoint, Kadarius Toney, if everything goes all right, Kadarius Toney should play on Sunday.
Okay.
Now, we all know Andy Reid will treat it as accordingly, get him into the flow, give him some personnel packages, some specific plays. They're still it's tough because we didn't talk to Juju Smith-Schuster after the game. I'm assuming he was receiving treatment immediately upon the game ending because of his neck and obviously what happened with his helmet on that 4th down play that you mentioned. But they really haven't had a full Juju Smith-Schuster game since his concussion, since the Jacksonville Jaguars game. But Kadarius Toney, I think is moving along just fine. I don't think it's a major thing. Of course, I've talked to some of the people from the New York Giants. You get the same sort of vibe. It's like, well, it's a hamstring. It takes a few weeks. Don't make it bigger than it needs to be. But then you look at it, and it's like, well, he didn't play half the games available to him when he was a part of the New York Giants. But he should be back this week, unless something happens where he also has a setback, if that makes sense.
I thought it was really interesting. I don't know how much other people had discussed this because I haven't really analyzed it with all the snap counts and all those kinds of things that information's out there now. But it felt like the first time in a long time that a chunk maybe or a section of the playbook for Andy Reid wasn't necessarily available because of the types of plays that you would see McCole Hardman. We expect McCole Hardman to run when he's there, but Kadarius Toney running those same plays. That's what Tyreek Hill used to do. Before Tyreek Hill, it was DeAnthony Thomas. They always had a guy that could do those jet sweeps and those little scissor routes and a lot of those things. Not that the other receivers can't run them, but it's not the skill set that creates such a mismatch on linebackers and safeties in the way that McColl and that Toney have. So, and I know Joe Mixon did not play for the Bengals. Is not making excuses for the Chiefs because offensively, I thought they played better. I don't want to know what would have happened with Joe Mixon running. Samaje Perine, solid running back, but he had over 100 yards. I don't want to know how many yards Joe Mixon would have had if he played in that game because he's a better player. But I'm curious on a rematch or this Chiefs offense with McColl and with Toney. They need those guys back. They really need that part of Andy Reid's offense to get back in there. But let's move on to the next question. And because I'm going to switch up the numbers. Not that you know what these are anyway. Anybody listening, he does not know what I'm about to ask him. I'm switching the two. So I said I'm going to get to number 4 in a second. I'm going to make that the 5th. We just got done talking about the offensive line. You and I have talked about the left side of that offensive line. And this is a burning question for you, Nate. And I'll put you on the spot here a little bit, but does Orlando Brown Jr. play for the Chiefs in 2023? If you had to say right now.
Right now?
There's not a podcast version of Freezing Cold Takes, and we will not clip this for social. But your gut feeling right now, based on it's one of the more fascinating storylines, and don't, because of how much was discussed going into the season, you just kind of forget about it. Everybody complains about it, but it's going to be one of those. What do Brett Veach and company do? Trading high assets, not giving him the deal when they first made that trade, franchising him, not coming up with the deal, and based on the reports out there of what they offered him and now what he was asking for. Question is, would they even go back and offer him now what they originally did? They can make, he's a year older. You can't offer him the same deal because he's a year older as a player. They can make reasons why they pull that offer back off the table. But man, do you expect him to be in a Chiefs uniform next season?
The uncertainty tells me no. I didn't see the development going this way, BJ. So I'm trying to be reasonable here with my answer to a fascinating question, and I'm glad you asked it, because it's been on my mind since Sunday. It's 3rd and 3 on a 3-man rush. You cannot get beat on that play. You can't. And when Orlando gets beat, it's not in a die by a slow death fashion, which is what I've come to learn and really respect and value with offensive line play. If you watch the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday, all they're trying to do is die a slow death. And what I mean by that is you're not trying to dominate at the snap of at the snap of the ball necessarily, but you are just staying between your man and the quarterback, giving your quarterback a chance to move up, to slide left, slide right. Hell, if we got to hold him, hold him.
Yeah.
And so if you're getting beaten this fashion, in the most critical snap of the game for the offense outside of Travis Kelce's fumble, BJ, did he play well against the Bills? I want to say no. Did he play well against the Bengals? Well, if the one play I remember is a catastrophic play, then the answer is no. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the position that you want to play. The left tackle has to be sound as much as he absolutely can be for the entire game. There was a game in week 2 on a Thursday night where Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa got to Orlando Brown. Now, Orlando Brown played a lot better in the rematch against the Chargers. I thought in year 2 with the system and understanding of Patrick Mahomes, you would not see a snap like you saw on 3rd and 3 with the game on the line late in the 4th quarter. I don't know what rookie tackle can come in through the draft and be a serviceable to a plus player for Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if that player exists, but the Chiefs would be wise to see if they can scout and evaluate and find that player, and then, obviously target that person in the draft. You have to do your due diligence on that side, so I understand it. I don't know if there's going to be a great free agency market. Guess what, y'all? Orlando Brown's going to be the best left tackle available on the free agency market if he reaches free agency. Now, of course, you can franchise tag him and sort of kick the can down the road in the offseason. But if you trade him, he's on your books until you actually trade him. If you trade him, what are you getting back that's going to help you replace that player? Because, you know, he's trying to protect the greatest asset in the franchise's history. It's so complicated, and I know fans want such a simple answer. But if he has a performance like he did Sunday in the playoffs and they lose, I can't guarantee that he's going to be back. And that's wild because I thought for much of the past offseason, he did have a lot of leverage. And if he did want to play with Patrick Mahomes, a lot of things were in his favor. But you got to play better. Again, this comes down to execution more than anything else. And there's been times this year where his execution has been, you know, there's been slippage. I would categorize it as. So last part of my answer, really quick. 3-man rush, you lose instantly. Now your quarterback's scrambling when he doesn't dictate when he's scrambling. He's being forced to scramble. Yep. Then the play continues, and you, again, cannot die a slow death because you can't get between your man and the quarterback. The quarterback has moved up, and so now you have another chance to die a slow death or to make the death a little bit slower. He doesn't do that. It's something that it's something that's going to have to get better sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And if Patrick can't extend the plays the way he wants, then the Chiefs offense is going to be limited in some capacity because you're going to play the best defenses in January. This ain't the Rams, even though the Rams have actually a pretty good defense by and large. Okay, this isn't the Jaguars. All right? Like, you know, this, like, you're going to play the Broncos on Sunday. The Broncos are going to try to make things, you know, slightly hard. And it's not like the Chiefs blow out the Broncos every year. You know, the Broncos have a pretty good defense. You're going to have to still be executing at a high level, even though on the other side of the ball, we've all seen their offense can't score. But on your job, like, the offense still has to, I think, perform at a very high level on Sunday because the Broncos defense is, like, actually decent to above average. Just like the Bengals, just like the Bills. Like, it's like you would think the answer would be yes this late into the season, but it's not, BJ. And so if there's any uncertainty, then I have to sort of lean towards no.
And the fascinating part of the whole Orlando Brown, who's the future left tackle for the Chiefs situation, is it's not as simple as fans be like, oh, just draft a left tackle.
That's hard, dog.
You're at the end of the first round.
Yep.
You've already gone through free agency.
Mm-hmm.
So you're banking on scouting
he's the
7 left tackles that you think are better than Orlando Brown Jr. They're in college right now before they ever step foot on an NFL field. That is not feasible. There's no way that is how they're going to plan on this. Is, oh, we're just going to wait for the draft and draft the best guy, and he's the guy.
Hey, Brett,
that is not how this works at all.
Who's the best free agent at left tackle? Looks at notes. Right. It's our guy.
The only other option, because left tackle, like premier left tackles, don't become available in free agency unless they're 38 years. And this could be what you see if it's not Orlando Brown Jr. They're going to find a left tackle who's 37, 38, an older player that has been really good that they think could be a spot starter. They will draft someone that they hope develops and can be that guy. But you have to sandwich those two things and sign a guy in free agency that you think could play or could start if needed, and then try to grab the best player in the draft that you like, that all your coaches like. Mm-hmm. But that's still a gamble. And the only other option is you trade marquee pieces for a player. And then it's kind of what they did with Orlando Brown Jr. turn around and doing the same thing. Or you figure out what you're going to pay Orlando Brown Jr. Because I would still make the case that if the Chiefs were going to extend him, it may be lower money than it was last year, but Orlando Brown Jr. could still get, and probably going to get tore apart for this, still think he would get more money from the Chiefs than he would anyone else on the open market. I don't think after this season that anyone's going to he's going to have a 1-year prove it deal somewhere else. It's going to be less than for what the franchise tag is.
Or it's a 2-year deal that's masquerading as a 1-year deal for cap sort of flexibility reasons for the team.
Well, they they offered him a 5-year deal that was masquerading as a lot based on all the
deal.
reports.
Yeah.
The last year is like, your 5th-year base salary is $75 million. So you're the highest paid tackle in NFL history.
Yeah.
That's not really how that works.
Hey, juking the numbers, man. There's nothing better. How's the accounting going? I get the sense of, look, man, like Orlando Brown had all the juice a player could possibly have in this situation in like March when they franchise tagged him. But the most diabolical thing in the NFL is the franchise tag, because things can change quickly. And once again, they could franchise tag you again. Yeah. And you'd only cost $20 million. Like, it's not like you're going from 16 to 25. It's 16 to 20. But guess what? The cap's rising. So if we don't find a better solution, we can still control your service for one more year, because the Players Association are idiots when it comes to this stuff.
If he gets franchised, he should sign that tag immediately. Because if they find something else better, they get a trade. Like, they can pull it. That doesn't happen very often, but
it is capable. Again, as someone who is not an agent, as someone who has no say in all of this, the Player Association kills 10 to 12 guys every year doing this nonsense, letting the owners get away with it, letting general managers have the ability to use this to their advantage. Like, if the mechanism's there, I have to do it. Like, you're too good, and I don't want to pay you market rate. So guess what? It's the top 5, but it ain't top 1 of the 5. Yeah. It's so stupid. And I tell the Player Association all this. I tell them all the time, until y'all fix this, you guys are never going to be as strong as the Major League Baseball Players Association, and never going to be as strong as the NBA Players Association. So until you get this out of the CBA, which is never happening, well, guess what? Yeah. Players like Orlando Brown are going to be punished for it, even though they are capable players, even though they should get paid what they're worth. But the problem is the worth, that value gets kind of muddled, because like, he hasn't. But
they cave on other things. But then they don't dig their heels in on franchise tag. But they give up on they lean into we don't want padded practices. We don't want this at training camp. It's just like, yes, that's nice and everything, but you're just going to get hurt. You're not going to be ready for the season. All the things that you don't like, but they're going to be ready.
It's so stupid.
Get the money figured out. Anyway,
I know this is kind of a tangent.
This is off season. This will be off season KCSN update discussions.
Oh, it's so bad.
Fifth burning question. Now that I've got you all riled up, it was actually number 4. Do you feel that the Chiefs still win out, or do you feel that the Chiefs win out and end up with the number 1 seed? And I'll give you some context as to why I'm asking it that way. You look at the Buffalo Bills schedule. Chiefs schedule is easier. They're not playing a Cincinnati Bengals. The best team they have left on their schedule is the Seahawks. And they haven't been they aren't the Bills. They aren't the Bengals. The Chiefs play well. They should win out their last 5 games. The Bills would have to win out as well to keep the number 1 seed. They've got the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bears, the Bengals on the road, or the Bengals are at home, and the Patriots. That's 4 tough games against 4 playoff team type teams.
Four outside of the Bears. 4 teams are incentivized to go win. The Bears are not incentivized to go win.
Right.
Hey, Bears, keep losing and protect Justin Fields at all costs. If you got to pull him off the field, pull him. We've defined it. He's good, guys. He's good. Just
he's a good player.
Keep that man healthy, Ryan Poles, and move forward.
Do you think the Chiefs end up with the 1 seed?
History says yes, because Patrick Mahomes exists.
I don't think they're going to lose. The question becomes, do you feel like the Bills are going to drop one of these games?
History says yes for a number of reasons, right? We've seen this before. That was Patrick Mahomes' first loss in December in 2 years, something like that, something wild. Yeah. So history says trust that the team you root for has.
Twitter tells me the Chiefs suck and they need to trade everybody. Don't trust Twitter for anything.
It's such a good. That was gold. That was immaculate. Yes, history says that as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy. And hey, if you get McCole back, if you get Joe Toney, if Kadarius Toney shows the production that he showed earlier after the trade, then I would say the Chiefs are expected to win out, and the Chiefs probably will win out. Quietly, the Bengals might be better than the Bills, guys. Like, and again, it happens quick. So I'm eager to watch that game because I think that's a week 17 or week 16 game. I can't remember. But that's pretty late in the season. That will have some implications, as they say.
It's Monday Night Football.
Juice it up. Is it in Cincinnati?
January 2nd. Yep.
Good luck. Good luck, Buffalo. It is.
I might do a Chiefs watch party on that day because that's a 1 seed.
Oh, yeah.
That's a 1 seed game.
It's up for
Circle
grabs.
that game. Yeah. That's a big one.
And the crazy thing, too, is based on how this all plays out, that Monday night game will be a preview. And so there'll be a real, like, I don't want to, like, show you everything because, like, we might see each other in the divisional round if we're the 2 and you're the 3, or if I'm the 3 and you're the 2, based on how this goes. Like, there's gonna be some real chicken, some real, like, how much you want to win this game versus, like, how much you want to win the next game.
There'd be storylines galore in that because there could be a scenario in which Chiefs have to beat the Titans, the Bengals, and then the Bills to go to the Super Bowl. Yeah. And it's just like exercise your demons on this path to just frustrating games and to watch and matchups that you struggle with. But January 2nd, that's going to be a good one.
Now, Von Miller is not playing right now. He's on IR. Yep. That matters. I don't know how many points the Jets can score, but at least they can score more with the quarterback who's operating the team now than the quarterback who used to operate the team. And their defense is really good. If you watch that Vikings game, because they were the early, like, primetime game or the early big game before the Chiefs Bengals, like, I watched that game and I go, oh, the Vikings aren't scoring anymore because, oh, that's right. The scheme can only do so much. You know, and so the Jets had a chance to win that game. I don't know. I mean, it's a divisional game. They benched
Bo Callahan.
Dog.
Facing another Bo Callahan on Sunday.
That is amazing. So who was at your birthday party? Because was it your teammates or was it other people?
I appreciate you so much for getting that reference.
Of course,
on the fly.
Course.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
there's a few Bo Callahans in the league right now. Seems like.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Hey, Bo, who rides for you, Bo? Like, who out here riding and dying for you? You know, does it, like, why is the coach so angry when I call him asking for, like, another story about just your background? Like, is it because Wisconsin's getting ready to go 3-9 next season? Like, because you're not on the team anymore? Or were you a headache for the head coach too? God, what a time. My dad loves that movie. Like, my dad still thinks that, like, that's kind of how the NFL works. And I'm like, yes and no, but sure, Dad.
I'm going to trade a bunch of draft picks and then be like, hey, go study these guys. What?
My dad loves that movie. So with that being said, I think the Chiefs probably win the 1 seed if they handle their business. And guess what, Chiefs fans? You should hold them accountable. If they lose one of these games in the next 5 weeks, then you can be just as angry as what you just saw on Sunday. Because we know who the better team is when they line it up for the next 5 weeks. We just know that. Now they need to stay healthy, of course, but I do think they'll win out. I am looking forward to Bengals Bills on Monday Night Football. Maybe we can set something up for that. But the Bills winning out will prove something to me that I'm like interested to see. Like, okay, Bills, how much do you value the 1 seed? Because will you go balls to the walls, or is the schedule too tough? And
that could be a division thing too. It could be like, do you want a home playoff game or do you want to have to go on the road the entire time because of what the Dolphins have been doing? So like, it could be like trying to hide stuff, but it might not be wrapped. I mean, anything can happen in the next 3 weeks, but there could be a lot of different storylines from a lot of different angles. And from the Chiefs perspective, it could be 1 seed. It could be shaking out who are you going to play in the first round if you don't have the 1 seed, or if the Chiefs end up dropping a game over the next couple weeks and that game there's so many different things. That NFL scheduling, brutal all year. They nailed that one for Monday Night Football.
The last thing I'll say on this is it reminds me of when I used to cover the NBA. It's one of my favorite times of the year is March Madness because everybody quietly forgets about the NBA. And it's like, okay, like we watch these younger athletes. Hey, who can be the Cinderella story? How's the Final Four going to shake out? Obviously, KU fans have reasons to like, hey, this is our season, basically. And that's cool. Yeah. And then March Madness ends in like early April. And you're like, oh, that's right. Kevin Durant doesn't have the 1 seed right now. Or, oh, LeBron James has to like get his team in order because, the trade deadline and God knows what he did with the team that year. Who's going to chase the Warriors down? Who wants to get the 2 seed so that they wait the longest to see the Warriors back when I covered the league? So when March Madness ends, it becomes a real sprint to the playoffs. Yeah. And like, for all the talk of like, well, they don't play defense and they only care about it until you get to the playoffs. Well, now the NBA players care because it's the only basketball on television. And for right now, college football season's over. We all know what the college football playoff is. Shout out to Georgia. They're going to dominate everybody. And what it tells you is now we are in a real sprint in the AFC.
Yeah.
The Cowboys are trying to chase the Eagles. That is the only sort of fascinating part of the rest of the NFC schedule. But there's real stakes between the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Titans because the Titans will probably win their division. But they
the Dolphins.
And they want to shore some things up. And the Dolphins as well. So it's a real sprint now. These 5 weeks really matter. This is where football gets to a higher level because it's cool when the 10 seed beats the 2 seed. That ain't happening. Like when it gets to the NBA sprint, it's like, oh, like the Celtics are really good. Like this isn't a fluke anymore. It's like, yeah, they're really good. So I just get the sense that every team's going to scoreboard watch, and that adds an extra layer to every game. And even though you're playing lesser, maybe inferior opponents, there's still pressure on the Chiefs because they have to win out. There's no other way to get the 1 seed, I believe, other than you have to win out from this day forth.
Yeah, and looking at it from the Bengals perspective, talk about them for a second. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson, kind of banged up. They're tied with both 8-4 records right now, and then you've got the Jets at 7-5. There's a lot. I think the Super Bowl champions can come out of the AFC, and I don't blame Odell Beckham for choosing the NFC. If it does end up with the Cowboys, easier path to get back to another Super Bowl. But that is Nate Taylor from The Athletic, man. We appreciate you for stopping by again this week. We'll be back with you next Tuesday, hopefully talking about domination over the Denver Broncos, because that will always be fun. But man, everybody listening, go check out Nate's work at The Athletic. Nobody does it better, covering the Kansas City Chiefs and being there inside with the players and coaches. So Nate, man, we appreciate everybody for listening. We'll have more content for you. We'll have one-on-one for you later today with Jeff Allen and Mike DeVito and get their perspective on a lot of this and what's going down on social media. I'm sure it's going to continue on for the rest of the day. Give us all something to tweet about.
You think Justin Reed gonna talk to us this week, BJ? You think he gonna talk to us? I mean, I want him to because he's a great hang. But you think
ask Ted, Nate.
I don't want to ask Ted. I know what that answer.
He's the one talking. Like you can't then hide him. He's the one who did it. He's the one tweeting about it. Put him out there and let him answer for what he said.
Justin,
what he's tweeting.
Your thoughts on Chiefs Broncos rivalry?
Yeah.
Just back away.
All right. That's all we've got for today. All right. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate everybody for watching. Hit that like, subscribe, follow us. We appreciate you. See y'all later. Have a great Tuesday.